MASH wasn't just a TV show. It was an era. With its perfect blend of comedy and raw emotion, it held viewers spellbound for over a decade, becoming one of the most beloved series in television history. But behind the laughter and powerful storytelling, time has taken its toll on the unforgettable cast. Today we take a closer look at the MASH cast members who are no longer with us. Starting with our beloved Loretta Swit. Loretta brought Major Margaret Hotlips Houlihan to life with a perfect blend of military precision and hidden vulnerability. Won 2 Emmys for her role as Major Margaret Hotlips Houlihan en masse, and was the only cast member other than co-star Alan Alda to appear in both the pilot and finale of the show. What made Swit's portrayal so compelling was how she transformed what could have been a one-dimensional character into someone audiences grew to genuinely care about. In the early seasons, Margaret was often the target of pranks and seemed to exist solely as a foil to Hawkeye and Trapper's antics. But Swit had bigger plans for her character. She worked tirelessly with the writers to develop Margaret beyond the stereotype of the uptight army nurse. As the series progressed, viewers discovered the woman behind the military facade, someone dealing with loneliness, professional challenges, and the complexities of maintaining authority in a male-dominated environment. Swit's chemistry with the entire cast was undeniable, but her scenes with Alan Alda's Hawkeye revealed layers of mutual respect that developed over time. The writers began crafting stories that showed Margaret's medical expertise, her genuine care for patients, and her struggle to balance military protocol with human compassion. Her evolution from a strict disciplinarian to a more nuanced character reflected the show's own growth from simple comedy to sophisticated drama. Margaret's relationships with other characters, particularly her friendship with B.J. Hunyat and her professional respect for Colonel Potter, demonstrated how the writers learned to use her character as more than just comic relief. The beauty of Swit's performance lay in her ability to show Margaret's vulnerability without sacrificing her strength. In episodes where Margaret dealt with personal disappointments or professional challenges, Swit never allowed the character to become pitiful or weak. Instead, she showed how someone could be hurt while maintaining their dignity and determination. This approach made Margaret's later romantic relationships feel more authentic and her professional achievements more meaningful. Her death was announced by her representative Harlan Boll, who said a New York City police report indicates Swit died of suspected natural causes. Beyond MASH, Swit was passionate about animal rights activism and maintained a busy career in regional theater, proving her versatility as a performer extended far beyond her iconic television role. But Margaret wasn't the only one providing spiritual guidance at the 477th. William Christopher created one of television's most beloved chaplain in Father Francis Muley, bringing warmth and genuine faith to a show often dealing with the darkest aspects of war. Christopher's Muley wasn't your typical TV priest. He was humble, sometimes bumbling, but always sincere in his desire to help others. Malahi was played by the enduring William Christopher, who sadly died at the age of 84 from lung cancer in 2016, as noted by The Hollywood Reporter. What made Christopher's performance so special was his ability to find humor in Malahi's earnest nature without ever making the character a joke. Whether he was organizing amateur boxing matches, struggling with his hearing problems, or providing comfort to wounded soldiers, Marla represented the show's heart and moral center. Christopher understood that comedy and pathos could coexist beautifully within a single character. His Malahi could deliver a perfectly timed comedic moment, then transition seamlessly into a scene requiring deep emotional truth. The character's gentle nature and unwavering optimism provided a necessary counterbalance to the cynicism that could easily have overwhelmed a show about war. Christopher's portrayal made it clear that Malahi's faith wasn't naive. It was a conscious choice to find hope and humanity even in the worst circumstances. His dedication to the role continued beyond the original series when he reprised Malahi in the spin-off after MASH, further cementing his association with this beloved character. One of the most remarkable aspects of Christopher's performance was how he made Malahi's religious devotion feel genuine without being preachy. The character served as a moral compass for the other characters without being judgmental or sanctimonious. Whether he was conducting interfaith services, counseling troubled soldiers, or simply offering a listening ear, Malky represented the best aspects of spiritual guidance. Christopher died on December 31, 2016 at age 84 from lung cancer. The commanding presence that audiences came to associate with Colonel Sherman T. Potter was masterfully embodied by Harry Morgan, who joined the cast in the fourth season and quickly became an integral part of the show's success. Morgan brought decades of acting experience to MASH, having already established himself in both comedic and dramatic roles throughout Hollywood's golden age. His Potter was tough but fair, gruff but caring, and possessed the kind of military wisdom that came from years of experience. What distinguished Morgan's Potter from Lance Stevenson's earlier commanding officer was the sense of paternal authority he brought to the role. While Henry Blake had been somewhat hapless and overwhelmed by his responsibilities, Potter was a seasoned professional who could match wits with Hawkeye and BJ while still maintaining his authority. Morgan's performance showed that leadership didn't require being a tyrant. Potter could be stern when necessary, but also showed genuine affection for his staff. His background as a cavalry officer provided rich material for storytelling, and Morgan delivered Potter's folksy wisdom and colorful expressions with perfect timing. The character became a stabilizing force for both the other characters and the audience, representing the kind of leader soldiers could respect and trust. Morgan's extensive experience in both film and television before joining MASH served him well in creating Potter's authoritative presence. He understood how to project command without resorting to shouting or intimidation, instead relying on quiet confidence and earned respect. Potter's relationship with his horse Sophie, his painting hobby, and his memories of earlier military campaigns all served to round out the character and make him feel like a complete person rather than just a military stereotype. Harry Morgan died in his sleep in 2011 at the remarkable age of 96, having lived a full life both on and off-screen. When viewers think of MASH's most memorable antagonist, Larry Linville's Major Frank Burns inevitably comes to mind. Though calling him simply an antagonist doesn't do justice to Linville's complex performance, Burns was simultaneously pathetic and infuriating, cowardly and arrogant, incompetent and occasionally dangerous. Linville had the challenging task of creating a character that audiences love to hate, while still finding ways to make him believably human. The genius of Linville's portrayal was that he never played Burns as a simple villain. Instead, he found the insecurities and fears that drove the character's worst behavior. Burns's constant rule-following and military posturing clearly came from someone desperate to prove his worth and gain respect he felt he deserved. Linville showed that Burns's incompetence as a surgeon wasn't just a character flaw. It was a source of genuine anxiety that manifested in his attempts to assert authority in other areas. The character's relationship with Margaret provided some of his most human moments, revealing someone capable of affection, even if he expressed it awkwardly. Linville's comedic timing was impeccable, but he never let the audience forget that Burns's actions had real consequences in a medical setting. What made Burns such an effective character was Linville's understanding that the most irritating people are often those who are trying their hardest to be important. Burns's desperate attempts to curry favor with superiors while bullying those below him reflected a realistic type of military bureaucrat that many viewers recognized from their own experiences. Larry Linville passed away in 2000 from complications following cancer surgery, leaving behind a legacy of having created one of television's most memorable supporting characters. The transition from Frank Burns to David Ogden Sty's Major Charles Emerson Winchester III marked a significant evolution in the show's approach to conflict and character development. Where Burns had been largely incompetent, Winchester was actually an excellent surgeon whose presence challenged Hawkeye and BJ in entirely different ways. Stiers brought a classical theater background to the role, creating a character whose arrogance was backed by genuine skill and intelligence. Winchester's Boston Brahmin background provided rich material for storytelling, and Stiers never made the mistake of playing him as a simple snob. Instead, he created someone whose elitist attitudes were constantly being challenged by the reality of war and the egalitarian nature of the MASH unit. Stiers' performance showed Winchester struggling with his own prejudices while grudgingly developing respect for his colleagues' abilities. The character's love of classical music and fine culture provided moments of genuine beauty and refinement in the midst of wartime chaos. Perhaps most importantly, Winchester's competence as a surgeon meant that conflicts with other characters were based on personality and values rather than professional inadequacy, leading to more sophisticated and interesting storylines. Stiers brought a theatrical vibe to the role that elevated the entire show. His classical training allowed him to deliver Winchester's elaborate speeches and cultural references with complete authenticity, making the character's intellectual pretensions feel genuine rather than forced. The evolution of Winchester from pure antagonist to reluctant ally reflected the show's growing sophistication in its final seasons. Stiers understood that Winchester's character wasn't just snobbery. It was a defense mechanism protecting someone who genuinely cared about excellence and was frustrated by what he saw as mediocrity around him. Sadly, Stiers died in 2018 at age 75 from complications related to bladder cancer, but not before creating one of television's most complex supporting characters. Before Potter took command, Lance Stephenson established the template for MASH's leadership with his portrayal of Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake. Blake was neither incompetent nor brilliant, neither a coward nor a hero. He was simply a man trying to do his best in an impossible situation. Stephenson's Blake was essentially a civilian in uniform, a doctor who had been thrust into military leadership and was constantly struggling to balance his medical responsibilities with his administrative duties. What made the character so appealing was his fundamental decency and his obvious care for the people under his command. Blake's romantic entanglements and his tendency to delegate difficult decisions to others made him seem more human than heroic, which perfectly fit the show's realistic approach to war. Stephenson understood that Blake's apparent weakness was actually a form of strength. He maintained his humanity in circumstances designed to strip it away. The character's shocking death in the show's third season finale became one of television's most memorable moments, proving that MASH was willing to tackle the real costs of war in ways that other series wouldn't dare attempt. Blake's character represented the amateur nature of much military leadership during wartime when civilian professionals are suddenly thrust into command positions they never trained for. Stephenson played this aspect of the character with perfect pitch, showing someone who was competent in his original field but often overwhelmed by military protocols and bureaucracy. Stephenson's death in 1996 from a heart attack came as he was recovering from bladder cancer surgery, ending the life of an actor who had helped define the early success of one of television's greatest series. Wayne Rogers brought charm, wit, and medical competence to the role of Trapper John McIntyre, creating the perfect partner for Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. During the show's early seasons, Rogers understood that Trapper needed to be more than just Hawkeye's sidekick. He had to be an equal partner in their pranks, their surgical work, and their attempts to maintain sanity in an insane situation. The partnership between Hawkeye and Trapper set the standard for buddy relationships on television, combining professional respect with personal friendship and shared mischief. Rogers played Trapper as someone who could match Hawkeye's irreverence while bringing his own distinct personality to their partnership. Where Hawkeye was often the instigator, Trapper was the willing accomplice who could take ideas and run with them in unexpected directions. Rogers' performance showed that Trapper was equally skilled as a surgeon, equally committed to their patients, and equally frustrated by the military bureaucracy that seemed designed to interfere with their medical mission. The chemistry between Rogers and Alda was natural and unforced, creating a friendship that audiences believed and invested in emotionally. Rogers brought a different energy to the Trapper-Hawkeye dynamic than what would later develop between Hawkeye and BJ. While the later partnership was more serious and emotionally complex, the original duo had a more carefree, almost fraternal quality. Rogers played Trapper as someone who genuinely enjoyed the pranks and practical jokes, not just as a way to cope with war, but as genuine entertainment. This approach made the early seasons feel more purely comedic, establishing the show's reputation for humor that would later support its more dramatic moments. Rogers' decision to leave the show after 3 seasons was partly due to his desire to have more input into his character's development, but his foundational work remained crucial to the series' success. Rogers passed away in 2015 from complications of pneumonia, but his contribution to establishing the show's tone and chemistry cannot be overstated. Moving beyond the main cast, Kelly Nakahara brought dignity and professionalism to the role of Nurse Kelly, one of the few recurring Asian characters on the show. In an era when Asian characters were often stereotyped or marginalized on television, Nakahara created a fully realized person who happened to be of Asian descent rather than a character defined solely by ethnicity. Nakahara's Yamato was a competent nurse who took her work seriously and maintained professional standards even when chaos reigned around her. The character served as a bridge between the American characters and the Korean setting, helping to remind audiences that the war was taking place in someone else's country and affecting people beyond the American military personnel. Nakahara's acting felt real and down to earth. She didn't fall into the usual stereotypes of Asian characters being mysterious or overly obedient, which were common on American TV. Her presence added authenticity to the show's medical scenes and provided representation that was meaningful without being tokenistic. Unlike many portrayals of Asian characters at the time, her occasional romantic storylines were treated with the same respect as others, avoiding stereotypes or fetishization. Nokohara's presence was warm, relatable, and grounded. She stood out without trying to. Appearing in over 100 episodes, she became a familiar and valued part of the show, proving both to viewers and producers that representation matters when done right. Her consistent role helped push for more diverse, realistic portrayals of Asian Americans on screen during a time when that was still rare. Sadly, Nokohara passed away from cancer in 2020, but her legacy remains strong. She opened doors for others and left a lasting mark on television history by simply being real, steady, and memorable. Patrick Adiet appeared in the early seasons as Ho Jon, a Korean boy who worked at the 4077 and formed friendships with the American doctors. Patrick Adiet's role showed the struggles of someone caught between two cultures and the heavy cost of conflict on ordinary people. Through Ho Jon, viewers saw both the pain of war and the small sparks of human connection that could still exist across language and cultural barriers. The character gave the show a chance to explore ideas of understanding and respect that were often missing from TV programs about war. Adiet played the role with dignity and intelligence, avoiding the stereotypes that so many Asian characters were given at the time. His scenes with Alan Alda and Wayne Rogers felt natural and warm, showing how genuine friendship could form between people who on the surface had very little in common. Part of what made Ho Jon so real was Adiati's own life story. Having faced cultural transition and displacement himself, he understood the role on a deeper level. He brought out Ho Jon's curiosity, vulnerability, and quiet strength in a way that made him feel like a real person rather than just a symbol. When Ho Jon eventually left the series, it reminded audiences that wartime relationships were often short-lived. Still, Adiati's performance made sure the character stayed memorable long after his exit. Adiet passed away in April 2025 at the age of 82. From surviving internment as a baby during World War II to building a career in entertainment, his life was truly remarkable. The last on our list is Dan Wilcox. Dan Wilcox may not have been visible on screen, but his contributions as a writer during the show's final seasons were crucial to its continued success and ultimate conclusion. Dan Wilcox joined the writing team on Season 8 and helped pen the infamous 2.5-hour finale. The writers like Wilcox understood that Mass had become more than just a comedy series. It had evolved into a platform for exploring serious themes about war, morality, friendship, and human resilience. The challenge of writing for such a well-established ensemble cast required understanding each character's voice and maintaining the delicate balance between humor and pathos that had made the show special. Wilcox and his fellow writers crafted stories that allowed these beloved characters to grow and change while staying true to their essential nature, ensuring that the series finale felt both surprising and inevitable. Wilcox passed away in February 2024. But his work on MASH helped ensure that the series maintained its quality and thematic consistency right through its historic finale. The 2.5-hour final episode, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, became one of the most watched television episodes in American history, bringing the series to a conclusion that honored both its comedic roots and its dramatic evolution. As we remember these talented individuals, we're reminded that great television requires more than just good scripts or interesting concepts. It requires performers who can bring authenticity, humanity, and genuine emotion to their roles. Which of these cast members do you miss seeing on screen? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.